They launched their first major coordinated protests. They formed the Sons of Liberty, a semi-secret society of elite agitators and merchants. And pamphlet production explodes. They start to hold public protests as theatre, hanging effigies, staged riots, symbolic burnings, and newspapers start to reprint speeches, turning the grievances of wealthy colonists into populist slogans. Britain repeals the Stamp Act due to pressure. This has a psychological effect. It validates protest as a tactic. It creates a feedback loop. Protest, repeal, momentum. Wealthy colonists realise British policy is reactive. If they keep up the pressure, if they shape the emotion and create the people as the political force driving their demands. Wealthy colonists repeatedly described British taxes as enslavement. They called the Stamp Act chains. They called the Tea Act tyranny. And they printed pamphlets warning that the colonies were being reduced to slavery. This was said in public, in print, by men like Thomas Jefferson, who, despite enslaving at least 600 people, is quoted in reference to British taxes as saying, "We have been reduced to slavery." George Washington warned of chains being forged in London, but based on the slave census of 1799, of the 317 enslaved people who lived with him at his residence in Mount Vernon, at least 120 of them were under the age of 16. He assigned chores and physical labor to children as young as 4, and he would separate them from their parents deliberately. The world that he built and the legacy that he left is a system of extraction, surveillance, and human trafficking. What he fought for was to remove British imperial oversight because he felt they were getting too moralistic. This hypocrite spoke of Republican virtues, but his own plantation was run like a prison. He freed 0 enslaved people during his presidency, despite enormous symbolic power to do so. He only freed his personal slaves in his will after his wife died, and he still did not free the majority of the enslaved community at Mount Vernon because they were technically owned by the estate. They used the word enslaved not as a reference to living bondage, but as a metaphor for trade oversight and land restrictions. The power of this metaphor was its emotional weight, but the reality behind it was empty. They were not fighting for liberation from slavery. They were fighting for the freedom to continue profiting off it.